Mommy, are we really moving abroad? Sadie tilted her head up, her question hesitant and laced with anxiety. I froze for a moment, then saved the revised divorce agreement and looked down at my daughter. Yes, sweetie. The world is so big and Mommy wants to go see it. Will you come with me? But Uncle Ethan just brought me a new doll today. Does that mean he wants to be my dad now? Sadie's voice grew smaller, her tiny hands clutching the doll so tightly it warped its shape. It was the only gift she had ever received from Ethan Hawthorne. A sharp pain lanced through my heart. In 6 years of marriage to Ethan, we couldn't even be described as a couple putting on a brave face. No one knew he had a wife, let alone a daughter. The day I gave birth, Ethan was flying abroad to celebrate his first love's birthday. When Sadie first started talking, I excitedly went to find him, my joy met with a cold, hard rejection. Don't say my name, and don't let her call me Daddy. His words were like a bucket of ice water doused over my enthusiasm. A wave of overwhelming grief and injustice washed over me, but I could only choke back my tears and nod. Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. Those 3 words defined my entire relationship with Ethan Hawthorne. He gave the orders and I executed them flawlessly. Our interactions were strictly business, nothing more. But despite all my precautions, I slipped up. Sadie, from who knows where, had learned to call him Daddy. It happened during a time Ethan brought a client back to the house unexpectedly. The word just tumbled out of Sadie's mouth. I had never seen Ethan's expression so dark. He shot Sadie and me a venomous glare, one filled with what looked like immeasurable hatred. To his client, he explained, "That's the nanny and her daughter. The child doesn't know how to address people properly." After that, Ethan never set foot in our home again. As Sadie grew older, she learned to respectfully address the man on the other end of the phone as Mr. Hawthorne. Every week, she would wait with eager anticipation for her turn to call him. This was an arrangement I'd secured only by threatening my own life, unable to bear my daughter's sadness. Winning Ethan's approval had become my daughter's obsession. And wasn't it mine, too? Once, I pulled 5 all-nighters to secure a $10 million deal for Ethan. I showed up with dark circles under my eyes, beaming, waiting for his praise. Instead, he flew halfway across the world to deal with a $200 million financial mess for his old flame. Another time, Sadie had a high fever in the middle of the night. I rushed her to the hospital, but my car skidded and hit a tree. I tried calling Ethan, but his phone was unreachable. Eventually, he just turned it off. I had no choice but to carry Sadie, dragging my own bleeding leg, and stumble my way to the hospital. I was bedridden for 10 days. Later, I found out that his first love had briefly returned to the country that night. Ethan had canceled all his meetings to comfort her the entire evening. I didn't want to lie to my daughter, so I chose my words carefully. "Sadie, sweetie, Mommy is taking you abroad so we can start a new life. Don't you want to be with Mommy?" Sadie's lower lip trembled, and she was on the verge of tears. "Do we have to go?" Her voice was hoarse. "My birthday is coming up. Maybe if Daddy's in a good mood, he'll finally accept me." She tried her best to hold back a sob, but tears welled up in her eyes. My heart ached so much it felt tight. A lump formed in my throat, and I buried my face in my daughter's clothes, afraid she would see me cry. "His sweetheart is coming back. It's time for us to go. If we stay here, it will only make him hate us more." Sadie's large, grape-like eyes widened in shock, and she shook her head vehemently. "No, I don't want him to hate me more." She wrapped her arms around my neck, a glimmer of hope still in her voice. "My final exams are in 2 weeks. Can we wait just 2 more weeks? What if? There were no what ifs. There would never be a what if. Even the doll in your hands was just a scrap of mercy he tossed your way because his sweetheart made him happy. But I couldn't bring myself to say such cruel words to my daughter. With tears in my eyes, I looked at her and reluctantly agreed. "Okay, we'll wait 2 more weeks." Marrying me, allowing me to have Sadie, racing to the hospital to make sure I didn't miscarry. Those 3 moments of tenderness had sustained me through countless cold, lonely nights. And now I was trading them for these last 2 weeks, a final farewell to him. Once these 2 weeks were over, our paths would never cross again. Chapter 2. I arrived at the company first thing in the morning, printed out the divorce agreement, and then began drafting my resignation. After 6 years of hard work, I had finally become the regional general manager of TN Group, but now I had to give it all up. Because Ethan Hawthorne was the CEO of the group. It was his family's company. From middle school through college, I had a secret crush on Ethan for 9 years. I followed him to TN Group, only to learn his true identity at a company orientation for new hires. I also learned that he was supposed to start a business with Jocelyn Vance, but she had suddenly eloped with the heir to some foreign conglomerate. Ethan was caught completely off guard and fell into a deep depression, just coasting at TN. One night, Ethan was blind drunk. For the first time, I let my selfish desires take over and we slept together. But I soon paid the price for my greed. I was pregnant. And so I became Ethan's wife, a woman he couldn't show in public, and our daughter lived a life no different from an illegitimate child's. 9 years of love, worn down by 6 years of a grueling marriage, were now in tatters. The price was too heavy. It had nearly destroyed my life. I let out a self-deprecating laugh and looked up at the final step of the resignation process on the screen, the confirmation button. My eyes misted over. I clicked yes without hesitation. The physical resignation letter needed to be handed to the HR department. The moment I stepped through the door, I saw 2 tall figures. Ethan was leaning in, explaining something carefully to Jocelyn Vance, his gaze tender and affectionate. They looked like a perfect match. As I stood there, stunned, a colleague at the door whispered, "Wow, Mr. Hawthorne personally escorted her to handle her onboarding. No wonder Mr. Hawthorne has been in such a good mood lately. Love is in the air." The words reached my ears, and a dense, aching pain spread through my heart. I lowered my eyes and placed my resignation letter on the HR manager's desk. Just then, a shadow fell over my hand. I looked up startled and met Ethan's dark, brooding eyes. Even after all this time, after all the pain that left me covered in scars, his deep-set eyes could still make me lose my focus. "Mr. Ha," I had barely started when Jocelyn walked over and looped her arm through Ethan's. "So this is the little schoolmate who followed you for 9 years?" The moment she spoke, Ethan turned to her, his eyes curving into a gentle smile that never belonged to him. "Is she? I don't really remember," he answered breezily. He was silently creating distance, eager to make it clear we weren't close, all to show his loyalty to Jocelyn. A lump formed in my throat, and my eyes burned. In 6 years of marriage, Ethan had been stingy with even the slightest smile. Yet he gave it away so easily, so casually, so freely to another woman. It turned out he wasn't an iceberg. He had just built a thick, impenetrable wall of ice, but only for me. Ethan's punishment for my greed had never stopped. My 6 long years of lonely endurance were dismissed by Ethan with a simple, "I don't really remember." To even speak of self-respect felt melodramatic now. I forced the corners of my mouth into a polite, strained smile. Just a coincidence. I had wanted to at least tell Ethan in person that I was leaving, but now it seemed completely unnecessary. "Manager Sterling, there's a kid outside with a bruised face who says she's your daughter." Someone from outside the office called out anxiously. I froze. I peeked out and saw Sadie, her hair and clothes a mess, with blood on her. The moment Sadie saw Ethan, she rushed in, crying at the top of her lungs. They said I'm a bastard with no dad, but she wasn't running to me. She was running to Ethan. I was terrified and tried to stop her, but I was a step too slow. Sadie's lip quivered as she pitifully hugged Ethan's leg, but she didn't dare call him Daddy. She just whimpered softly, "Boo-hoo-hoo." If only Daddy would just hold her. Then it wouldn't matter if the other kids called her names. She could bear it. Ethan's expression flickered with emotion, his lips twitching slightly. But when his gaze landed on Jocelyn, he quickly masked it. When he spoke again, his voice was utterly cold. "Manager Sterling, control your child. This is a company, not a daycare." Chapter 3. My heart sank into a bottomless pit. Sadie stared, stunned and bewildered. The man had already averted his gaze, ruthlessly shaking his leg free and striding out of the room. He and Sadie, who shared the same blood, were more distant than strangers. As I tended to Sadie's wounds, her tears fell like fat pearls onto the back of my hand. My heart ached. I forced my voice to be gentle as I tried to comfort her. "It doesn't hurt, sweetie. Mommy will go deal with them for you." The tears fell even faster. Of course, I knew why my daughter was crying. More than the physical pain, it was Ethan's cold indifference that pierced our hearts. But I couldn't say it. I didn't dare. If I spoke the words, my own defenses would crumble. All I could do was grit my teeth and endure to be the sky that sheltered my daughter's small world. After her wounds were treated, I took an early leave. Carrying my daughter to the elevator, I saw Ethan and Jocelyn waiting, laughing and talking. The moment he saw me, Ethan's expression became unreadable. I instinctively took a step back and turned towards the stairwell across the hall. We were on the 20th floor, but for me, that was better than the suffocating torment of a few seconds in that elevator. I walked down, flight after flight, listening to the soft laughter resume behind me. Ethan didn't even bother with a simple, polite wait. Sadie snuggled into my neck and whispered, small but firm, 13 more days. My eyes instantly welled with tears. It felt as if a giant hand was mercilessly squeezing my heart. Why did such a good child have to be denied something as simple as a father's love? Mommy's so sorry. If it wasn't for my stubbornness. If it wasn't for my greed. If it wasn't for me. Every year on her birthday, when my daughter would sit by the window, staring blankly, waiting for someone who would never appear, my heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. Countless times I had wanted to end it all, but Sadie was the light of my life, my saving grace. Mommy, don't cry. Sadie, ever sensitive, reached up and clumsily wiped away the tears that had unknowingly streamed down my face. She mimicked me, pressing her forehead against mine and comforting me in a muffled voice. Sadie will always be with you. By the time we reached the first floor, the back of my heels were raw and bleeding. I didn't even notice. I walked out the main doors under the worried gaze of the receptionist. Is the elevator haunted or something? Why take the stairs? The unexpected question came from my left. I whipped my head around. Ethan stood there, tall and imposing, his face displeased. His eyes scanned the back of my feet. Don't bother with these cheap tricks to get my attention. My tact and my attempt to make things easy for him were, in his words, cheap tricks. When there's no love, everything you do is wrong. But I had no energy left to argue. I lowered my eyes and said faintly, I understand. Ethan was surprised by my compliance and studied me seriously, but I had already turned away. In a few days, my retreating figure paused. Ethan, oblivious, continued, it's Sadie's birthday. Both of us, the big one and the little one, turned to look at him at the same time, our shock identical. It was more unbelievable than seeing a ghost. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I suppressed a surge of joy and confirmed, you're going to celebrate her birthday? My eyes shone with undisguised hope. Sadie's expression was even more telling. She looked as if she was about to become the happiest child in the world. Something in Ethan's heart suddenly softened. It was as if a path he'd walked 1,000 times, mundane and unremarkable, had suddenly burst into color. I should be free that day. Is there anything Sadie wants? Sadie was already bursting with excitement but managed to restrain herself. Can I have an outdoor birthday party? So many other kids had one. She was so envious. More importantly, she wanted everyone to know she wasn't a kid without a dad. I looked at Ethan nervously. He was so resistant to being a father. Would he get angry? The two of us waited as if for some fateful judgment. Okay. An outdoor birthday party it is. Chapter 4. I thought I was hearing things. Sadie was even more direct. Mommy, am I dreaming? She foolishly poked her own forehead. The cut started to bleed, but she just giggled happily. It's not a dream. I smiled through my tears, my heart aching as I gently wiped the blood from Sadie's forehead. It was such a simple thing, yet here we were, mother and daughter, crying and laughing at the same time. Ethan felt a little uncomfortable. Back home, Sadie threw herself into preparing for the party. She made a stack of invitations by hand and personally invited every kid in her class. I was happy to help, tackling even the most difficult tasks for her. The night before the party, Sadie was busy drawing. She looked up brightly and asked me, "What present do you think Daddy will get me?" Then she answered her own question, "I'll love whatever he gets me." After a moment's thought, she changed her mind again. Just having Daddy there will be the best present, the final decorations were up, and it was time for her weekly call. Sadie nervously dialed the number she knew by heart. Ring, 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 no one answered. The familiar sting of rejection and abandonment instantly wiped the smile from her face. I noticed the change in her and offered my usual comfort. Maybe Daddy's busy. Why don't you try again in a little bit? She had already redialed. Again, the mechanical ringing. Just as she was about to hang up, the call connected. Uncle Ethan, Daddy, someone's on the phone for you. A girl's voice, just as young as hers, came through the speaker. On our end, Sadie and I froze. Did we dial the wrong number? Impossible. We knew Ethan's number by heart. Who is it? A more familiar female voice. I had just heard it a short while ago. I frantically hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. Sadie's face was a mask of confusion. I quickly deleted the call from the log and forced a smile to cover up my panic. I forgot to tell you, he changed his number. Mommy hasn't memorized the new one yet. I'll tell you tomorrow when I remember it. I didn't know if she was convinced, but Sadie didn't ask any more questions. She just seemed down, the excitement of party planning gone. Before bed, Sadie climbed into my bed, clutching her slightly worn doll. Mommy, will Daddy come tomorrow? She had sensed it after all. My heart throbbed with pain. I wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close. Of course he will. You just sleep tight tonight, and you'll have a wonderful birthday tomorrow. The promise was as hollow and elusive as Ethan himself, a man I could never hold, never get close to. The next day at the party, all the children had arrived, and their parents had gathered. Only the one person who should have been there was conspicuously absent. One of the kids started to taunt her. You're lying, aren't you? You don't have a dad. Sadie got upset and yelled back. I do. You're the one who doesn't. I recognized the troublemaker. She was the one Sadie had fought with before. For some reason, her parents hadn't shown up. Just as the little girl finished speaking, her eyes lit up as she looked toward the entrance, waving happily. Daddy, Mommy, I instinctively looked over and my pupils constricted. My chest felt tight, a lump of air caught in my throat. In the distance, Ethan and Jocelyn Vance were walking in, arm in arm. The little girl ran into his arms. Ethan, who usually wouldn't even crack a smile, was beaming today. When his eyes fell on Sadie, there was a flash of awkwardness. The little girl was already pulling him over, eager to show off. See, I have a dad. Jocelyn recognized me too, looking quite surprised. Manager Sterling, I didn't realize today was your daughter's birthday party. What a coincidence. Our Jiggy's birthday is tomorrow, so we thought we'd come and get some ideas. Jiggy loudly emphasized, my daddy is going to throw me a party that's even bigger than yours. Her taunt was sharp and piercing. Ethan did nothing to stop her. Then again, the child was just stating a fact. What was there to stop? My heart was already nothing but a pile of ash, but the embers within would still occasionally stir, searing me with their heat. My path of unrequited love for Ethan was a starless night with no dawn. Only now had reality finally, brutally, shaken me awake. Speaking of which, where is her father? Jocelyn deliberately brought up the sore subject. It was like she was maliciously poking at my wounds. A clear, small voice answered first. My daddy's dead. Chapter 5. The entire party fell silent. A muscle in Ethan's eye twitched, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. In a few moments, I composed myself, looked around at the other parents, and spoke with a hint of apology. I also invited everyone here today to clear this up. Sadie's father passed away before she was born. Kids will be kids, but I hope you will all teach your own children to be kind. The other parents weren't heartless. Hearing this, they came over to offer their condolences. Jocelyn also put on a show of sympathy. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. I cut her off coolly. It's nothing to be sorry about. Aside from that little hiccup, the birthday party went rather smoothly. Sadie played the part of the little hostess, taking good care of every child. Watching her small, busy figure darting around, my eyes grew misty again and again. My child didn't deserve this. As the party wound down, most of the guests had left. Sadie sat on the heart-shaped swing, staring blankly at the ground. She had decorated it with flowers, piece by piece, hoping to take lots of beautiful pictures with Ethan. But now, forget pictures, Ethan had spent the whole time holding that jiggy, never letting go. I walked over and knelt in front of Sadie, asking gently, "Want Mommy to take a picture for you?" In an instant, Sadie's tears broke free, and she buried her face in my embrace, sobbing quietly. My heart ached so much I could barely breathe. I held her tightly. It took an hour for us to compose ourselves. I took Sadie's hand and we headed home. The house was as empty as ever. On the table was only the surprise I had left for Sadie. Ethan hadn't even bothered to leave a birthday present. He had left the party abruptly in the middle of it all, and I had no idea where he'd gone. Not that it was my business anymore. Now, there were only 9 days left. After living in this house for 6 years, there were too many little things to pack. After putting Sadie to bed, I started tidying up alone. Most of it was daily necessities I had kept in reserve for Ethan. Bath towels, hand towels, toothbrush cups, slippers. Some of them had gone bad from disuse, their intended user never showing up. 11 o'clock at night. As I came back from throwing out the second load of things, the elevator doors opened, and I found myself face to face with Ethan. He was holding a shopping bag in his left hand, his right hand raised to knock on the door. Seeing me, he looked uncharacteristically embarrassed. I don't have a key. Of course, he didn't have a key. After that huge fight, he had snapped his own key in half and flushed it down the kitchen drain. I walked past him, unlocked the door, and then blocked his entry. Sadie's asleep. Whatever it is, you can say it out here. Ethan's brow furrowed. What was wrong with her? She had never treated him like this. The thought passed in a flash. He spoke again, completely unconcerned. I'm planning on staying here tonight. He expected me to be grateful. After all, this was what I had always hoped for, to be like a normal family, sharing meals, putting our child to bed together. A stinging pain in my heart. The very thing I had once dreamed of now only filled me with complicated emotions. I don't think that's a good idea. There's nothing here for you to use. Just a few days ago, I never would have imagined I would one day refuse Ethan. I was still in pain, still hurt. But I wouldn't let myself fall into that abyss again. A strange frustration welled up in Ethan. What's this attitude for? Is it because I didn't comfort Sadie at the office that day? Or is it because I didn't show up for the birthday party? You're the one who taught Sadie to say her father was dead, right? What are you trying to achieve? My reasonable refusal was met with 3 aggressive, accusatory questions. I curved my lips into a smile and looked up, quietly studying the man who had consumed 15 years of my life. He seemed to have changed, yet he hadn't changed at all. The confident, carefree spirit I had once fallen for had matured and become more restrained over time. But I was no longer anchored to him. I asked calmly, was Sadie wrong? In what way are you, to me, to her, to this family, any different from being dead? The words tumbled out of my mouth, sounding unlike me at all. Ethan's face contorted, unable to believe I would defy him like this. Since you're so unhappy, why don't you get a divorce? Fine, let's get a divorce. Chapter 6. The argument at the door came to an abrupt halt. Ethan's eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. The suffocating silence was broken by a soft sob. Sadie stood behind the door, clutching her doll, not daring to cry too loudly, but she whimpered, I don't want Mommy and Daddy to get a divorce. This time, Ethan didn't correct her. He shot me a warning glare, pushed past me, and walked inside. He looked around for a pair of indoor slippers but found none. Giving up, he pulled a doll out of the paper bag. Look, your birthday present. Sadie stopped crying and peeked up at me. Ethan noticed and scooped her up, coaxing her. This is a present from Daddy. You don't need to look at anyone else's face for permission. Hearing him call himself Daddy, I couldn't help but look up. I had waited 6 years, and the day had finally come. But I didn't feel the excitement I had imagined. Perhaps those thousands of days and nights had already drained me of all my energy. Can I call you Daddy? Of course you can. Will you stay and tell me a story tonight? I can. In the end, Ethan walked into the living room barefoot. Father and daughter were finally together. Ethan played along with all of Sadie's childish games. I sat on the sofa, a detached observer. Something was wrong. Was Ethan doing this out of guilt? But this was far too much compensation. A gift letting Sadie call him Daddy and now planning to stay the night. Dreams are always cruel. The more perfect they seem, the harsher the awakening. A shrill ringtone pierced the air. Ethan took his phone and walked out to the balcony. While he was on the phone, Sadie quickly ran to my side, her face beaming with excitement. Mommy, from now on, we can all live together. Sadie, do you want to live with Daddy? Just then, Ethan pushed open the balcony door, overheard, and asked her directly. Yes, Sadie nodded emphatically. Ethan sat down cross-legged beside her. If you help Daddy with one little thing, you can live with Daddy forever. Such a good deal. Sadie didn't hesitate for a second, her eyes shining. What is it? The light in her eyes was too bright. Ethan suddenly didn't know how to begin. After a moment's hesitation, he reached out and stroked her head. It's too late today, I'll tell you tomorrow. Seeing her hesitation and fear, he smiled. Daddy's not leaving tonight, I'll tell you a bedtime story. He was acting like a truly doting father. The love overflowing in his eyes didn't seem real. Watching Ethan carry our daughter into the bedroom, I pinched my thigh hard, the pain forcing tears from my eyes. I took a deep breath and quietly followed them. Through the wall, I could hear Ethan actually telling a bedtime story. His voice was low and steady, the story vivid and engaging. He didn't sound like a first-timer. Jocelyn and the girl named Jiggy instantly popped into my head. How many times had he told stories to Jiggy to have become so practiced? The moments Sadie cherished so carefully were just second-hand affection. We, his legitimate wife and daughter, felt like thieves. This fleeting moment of family warmth was stolen from someone else's hands. My brief excitement faded, and I went back to curl up on the sofa. Half an hour later, Ethan came out. "Where are the toiletries? She's received your apology. You should go back now." I didn't move, wrapping the blanket tighter around myself, my gaze calm. Ethan's face hardened. "Don't say such discouraging things." My expression didn't change. "That was Miss Vance on the phone, wasn't it?" His only response was a frown of displeasure. "Are you keeping tabs on who calls me now?" I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I got up, went back to the master bedroom, and locked the door from the inside. A man as proud as him wouldn't stay where he wasn't welcome. He would leave. The night passed quickly. I lay awake almost until dawn. I didn't know if Ethan had left, but I thought I heard the sound of the front door closing several times during the night. "Daddy, why are you sleeping on the sofa?" Sadie's bright question heralded the morning. Chapter 7. Behind the bedroom door, my heart pounded wildly. He actually stayed the night? What he said yesterday about living as a family, was it true? Was my beautiful dream more than just a fleeting moment? "Daddy will make you breakfast." The clatter of pots and pans came from outside. It was accompanied by Sadie's giggling corrections. Father and daughter clumsily made breakfast together. "Go wake Mommy up." I was startled from my daze, quickly messing up my hair to pretend I had just woken up. My daughter knocked politely on the door, her voice full of excitement. "Mommy, Daddy made breakfast." I blinked back the tears that threatened to spill. Okay. The breakfast didn't look very appetizing, but that didn't stop Sadie from thinking it was the most magnificent feast in the world. She wolfed it down and then asked eagerly, "Daddy, what do you need my help with?" Ethan had barely eaten. The moment Sadie put down her chopsticks, he did the same. He chose his words carefully. "Do you remember Jiggy?" "I remember. Jiggy has a very rare disease and needs a bone marrow transplant. The initial screening shows that you might be a match." A bone marrow transplant, a matter of life and death, and he said it so casually. Crash, my beautiful dream shattered into a million pieces. Ethan pursed his lips and tried to explain, "It's not a definite match, the hospital just suggested." "Ethan Hawthorne, are you, right now, using our daughter's life to please another woman?" I snapped back to reality, interrupting him, enunciating every single word. His Adam's apple bobbed. His explanation held no weight. "No, what I mean is..." "Okay, I'll do it," Sadie agreed without hesitation. "What? Sadie, do you have any idea what you just agreed to?" I was the first to object, my voice rising in protest. But Ethan had already stood up, overjoyed. For the first time ever, he picked her up and planted a kiss on her cheek. "You really are Daddy's good girl." He tossed out a "I'll come pick you up later" and rushed off. As for my wishes, he couldn't care less. I, who had never raised my voice to my child, broke my own rule for the first time. "Sadie, are you crazy?" Sadie choked back a sob but didn't flinch. "Mommy, if I agree, we can all live together from now on." That one sentence silenced all my anger. The unvented rage transformed into a deep, aching love. What had Ethan ever done to deserve our daughter gambling with her own life for him? I gritted my teeth, my eyes hardening. "Mommy is taking you away today. We're leaving them behind." Though young, my daughter had a mind of her own. She shook her head, her resolve firm. "No." Of course, I could have taken her away by force, but I would have had to face a lifetime of her resentment. I had made that mistake once. I didn't want to make it again. After much thought, I gave her my final bottom line. "The moment your life is in any danger, I have the right to stop everything immediately." Sadie nodded. 3 days later, at the city's central hospital, her small body was pushed into one machine after another. So much blood had to be drawn from her thin arms. I watched her face turn pale, yet she gritted her teeth and refused to cry out. I held my breath, tears streaming down my face. "Oh my God, Jocelyn rushed over, seemingly unable to watch, and buried her face in the chest of the man beside her. Ethan looked down, comforting her with gentle and pained words. He had forgotten that the one being tormented inside was his own flesh and blood. I wanted so badly to ask, "Isn't Sadie's life a life too?" But the words were stuck in my throat. I had to respect my daughter's choice. After a full round of tests, Sadie was pale and gasping for breath, but Ethan was still holding that damn Jocelyn. He couldn't spare a single drop of concern for his own daughter. Chapter 8. For the first time, I was completely and utterly disappointed in this man. Before, I was atoning, paying a price, waiting for his forgiveness. I naively believed that we would one day have some shred of affection between us. It turned out I was just lost in a fog of my own making, trapping myself. While waiting for the hospital's results, I went home, signed the divorce agreement, and quickly found a buyer for the house. There were 3 days left until Sadie's final exams. The house was sold, and the hospital results came back. Not a match. Those 3 words were a massive relief. Ethan, however, did not look pleased. How ridiculous. He was actually unhappy that his own daughter didn't get the chance to risk her life. Sadie hadn't fully recovered her strength, but she staggered over to find Ethan. "Duh, who's your dad?" His attitude shifted on a dime. His dark expression was a wall stopping Sadie from getting any closer. Seemingly realizing his harshness, Ethan quickly tried to explain, "Sorry, I'm just not in a good mood." He reached out, intending to pat her head. The next second, I scooped up my child, took a step back, and stared at him coldly. "Ethan Hawthorne, are you disappointed she didn't lose her life?" "Claire Sterling, don't be ridiculous." "Mommy, I feel so dizzy." Sadie managed to squeeze out the words, her voice barely a whisper. I felt a weight on my shoulder and realized she had gone limp. Terrified, I screamed. "Doctor!" The doctor took one look and his expression turned grave. "Get her to the operating room now?" It was a flurry of chaotic activity. I clasped my hands tightly, pacing back and forth outside the operating room. The sound of hurried footsteps approached. Ethan and Jocelyn walked over. Even at a time like this, their hands were still tightly clasped. How is she? Not our daughter. Not Sadie. Just a cold, impersonal she. Enough. I had had enough of all of it. I gritted my teeth, forcing the words out from between them. "Ethan Hawthorne, let's get a divorce. I'm setting you free." Ethan looked at me reproachfully. "Now is not the time to talk about." The operating room doors opened, and a doctor walked out. "Who are the parents?" "I am." "Come with us," the doctor said, then paused. "Is the child's father here? She keeps asking for her daddy." I glanced at Ethan. He shifted slightly. Just then, Jiggy ran out from a room down the hall, crying, "I don't want a shot, I want my daddy." Ethan instantly turned and hurried towards Jiggy. His priorities were clear without a word being spoken. My heart crumbled into ruins. I turned back to the doctor and said in a low voice, "Her father is dead. I'll go in." Sadie was strong. She made it through the surgery. It was an acute infection, but they had caught it in time, and there would be no lasting effects. Although I never told Sadie the details of what happened outside the operating room, it was as if she sensed something. She spent her days just staring out the window, lost in thought. Ethan showed no concern whatsoever during this time. On the day of her final exams, Sadie had recovered enough and insisted on going. After the exam, Sadie took my hand, looked up at me, and said with firm resolve, "Mommy, I want to go to a country where it's warm all year round." I was stunned for a moment, then my vision blurred with tears. Okay. Withdrawing her from school, booking flights, exchanging currency. It all happened quickly. An hour before our flight took off, I mailed the divorce agreement to Ethan's office. It took me 6 years to realize he didn't have a heart. My life's most difficult lesson was finally over. The divorce agreement was my graduation certificate. The moment the courier took it, I let out a long, heavy sigh. 2 minutes before boarding the plane, I composed a text message and typed in the familiar number. "I wish you both a lifetime of happiness." Sent. I took out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and threw it in the trash. The plane ascended into the clouds. Sadie was sleeping peacefully in my arms. I watched as the wing cut through layers of mist, and a golden ray of light shot through like an arrow. It was followed by more and more bright light, until all I could see was a clear, open sky. After 6 long years of night, my dawn was finally coming. Chapter 9. Ethan was in a meeting when he received the message. He had spent the last few days at the hospital, and it had put him behind on a lot of work. Seeing Claire's bizarre text, he assumed she was being jealous again and deleted it without a second thought. "Mr. Hawthorne, does the new regional general manager still require your personal approval?" "No." He waved his hand dismissively, though the title felt strangely familiar. He didn't have time to dwell on it. He hadn't had a chance to properly check on Sadie after she fainted. He just wanted to finish the meeting as quickly as possible so he could at least go and apologize to the little one. He didn't dislike Sadie. In fact, you could say he liked her. It was just that every time he saw Sadie, he was reminded of that night he couldn't control. He hated things being out of his control. After the meeting, Ethan postponed all non-essential matters and headed straight for the hospital, but he ran into Jocelyn in the lobby first. "Ethan, what should I do? The hospital still hasn't found a suitable match, but they said we could use Sadie's blood for now to tide her over." She looked completely helpless. She had brought Jiggy back this time for medical treatment. She was, after all, a girl he had once loved. Ethan felt a lingering guilt towards her, feeling that he hadn't been firm enough back then, which led to her leaving him. So he had been trying to compensate them in various ways. Now, hearing her words, he felt a strange discomfort. He nodded vaguely. "I'll go ask." But the bed was empty. Ethan stared at the empty bed and asked a nurse, who informed him that the patient had been discharged long ago. A strange panic began to set in. He rushed home to check. The lock on the door was new. He knocked and the door was opened by construction workers. The walls and floors were all torn up. Ethan frowned. "Who are you? Why are you trespassing in a private residence?" The situation escalated until the police were called. It was only when Ethan saw the new owner's property deed that things calmed down. The police officer couldn't help but ask, "Your wife sold the house and you didn't even know?" Ethan couldn't answer the question. He didn't know. This house, Claire had bought it herself, because he had refused to let them into his house. He stood in front of the apartment complex, feeling like a stranger, lost and confused. Back in his car, Ethan scrolled through his contacts for Claire's number. All the call records were incoming. It had always been Claire single-handedly maintaining their connection. For some reason, Ethan's heart trembled. Then his brow furrowed again. Just because of that one night, his life had been half ruined. This was what Claire deserved. He dialed her number, filled with anger. When she picked up, he was going to give her a piece of his mind. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service." The cold, mechanical female voice extinguished his anger. "Fine, fine, play these games." He'd see just how long Claire could hold out. Ethan sneered, tossed his phone aside, and drove back to the company. For a whole week, he didn't see a single familiar face at the office. Before, whether he wanted it or not, Claire would use all sorts of excuses to bring him a homemade lunch every day. But without him realizing it, it had been almost a month since he'd last received one. He started to wander around the office aimlessly. He made an appearance on every floor in every department, waiting for Claire to come find him, but it was all for nothing. Instead, the employees became paranoid, on high alert. The more Ethan tried not to care, the more he did. He stared at the office floor plan, where Claire's office was clearly marked. "Mr. Hawthorne, the regional general manager is asking if you have a moment." Regional general manager? Ethan glanced at the floor plan. It was the office he had just been staring at. He shot up from his chair. "I'm on my way." The office wasn't large. Ethan could see everything at a glance, but he didn't see the person he was looking for. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and sat down. The new manager froze, then asked timidly, "The layout is exactly as Manager Sterling left it. Is there anything you'd like to change?" This was exactly what the new manager had been afraid of, which was why he hadn't dared to touch a thing since taking over. Rumor had it the company's CEO highly valued the former manager's work. Ethan's expression tightened. "Where is she?" The new manager was even more stunned. I'm not aware of the details of Manager Sterling's resignation." "Resignation?" Ethan shot up like a storm and strode to the HR department to demand answers. The HR manager trembled. "Secretary Kaio said it was your instruction, and we did ask for your opinion when the new manager was appointed." His mind flashed back to the question in the meeting a few hours ago. No wonder the title sounded familiar. Ethan was furious. "She's a core member of this company, and she resigned without even informing me." "What am I paying you people for?" the HR department, caught in the crossfire, could only reiterate. It was reported. Secretary Kaio said to follow the standard procedure. Speak of the devil. Jocelyn stood at the door, shrinking back apologetically. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I saw you were so busy with other things, I thought Manager Sterling had already told you." Chapter 10. What was done was done. Ethan didn't want to take his anger out on others. He returned to his office with a stern expression. Jocelyn followed him, whispering, "Haven't you been putting up with her for long enough? This is a perfect opportunity." She had come back to win Ethan back, to prove to that other man that plenty of excellent men would want to marry her. She had thought it would be as easy as snapping her fingers, but then Claire Sterling had appeared out of nowhere. Ethan's gaze was cold and sharp. He stared at her and warned, "This is my private business. Watch your boundaries." There it was again. Jocelyn bit her lip. It was clear he favored her. When it was a choice between the two of them, she was always the one he chose. But it felt like there was a thick, invisible barrier between them. Whenever she tried to get closer, the barrier would push her away. She had to think of something. The new manager was not very good. He had only been there for 3 days and had already caused a huge disaster. A client had lost millions of dollars and came storming into the office. The new manager could only offer awkward apologies, which only made the client angrier. Jocelyn couldn't stop the client, nor was she good with words, so the client burst right into the conference room. Ethan was in the middle of negotiating a new partnership. The other party saw the commotion and immediately called off the deal. Ethan was furious, but Jocelyn just stood by, making unhelpful, dismissive comments. "It's okay, Ethan, we'll make it up next time." "Make it up how? You're done here." In one fell swoop, Ethan fired several people. The general manager position remained vacant, with no suitable candidate in sight. No one was quite right. No one was as good as Claire. He had never realized just how irreplaceable Claire was. One late night, Ethan allowed himself to drown in alcohol. In a hazy, half-awake state, he seemed to see Claire's figure. The chaotic night and the feelings pulled him back to that confusing night 6 years ago. He wasn't completely drunk then. He knew who was in front of him. He had the strength to push her away, but for some reason, he let it happen. When he found out she was pregnant, the thought of an abortion never once crossed his mind. The option of marriage immediately popped into his head, but a voice inside him was always holding him back. He couldn't resolve the conflict between his reason and his emotions, so he projected it all onto Sadie. He used the issue of her name as a way to suppress the emotional side of himself he was unwilling to admit. When he learned that Jocelyn's child might need Sadie to save her life, his first reaction was relief. Finally, he would have a legitimate reason to let Sadie call him daddy. He wouldn't have to be so conflicted, wouldn't have to admit his own weakness. But that plan had also fallen through. Sadie's daddy once again became a shackle. It was as if admitting her identity was admitting his own fleeting moment of weakness back then. It would make him a despicable person who had betrayed his first love. But now, no matter how much Ethan tried to escape, he could no longer deny it. After 6 years, he couldn't live without Claire. Her every move, her every action had become a part of his daily life, as essential as breathing. But it wasn't enough. His knowledge of her came only from what she chose to show him. Claire. A low, hoarse sigh dissipated into the night. Jocelyn hid by the door, her expression darkening. The next day, a crowd gathered at the entrance of TN Group. Jocelyn stood at the door, her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I made a mistake. You can punish me, but the child is innocent. You're the only one who can help me now." The doctor said that without a matching bone marrow, Jiggy might not live much longer. Her biggest wish is to be with her father. The head of HR walked by and asked curiously, "Secretary Kaio, isn't your child enrolled in the standard reimbursement plan?" The company had excellent benefits and provided comprehensive social security for new employees and their immediate family. So the HR department had a general idea of any changes. Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" Jocelyn looked flustered, but she couldn't stop him in time. "It means it's a minor illness, not something that would require major medical coverage." How can a bone marrow transplant be a minor issue? Maybe it was a misdiagnosis by the hospital? A dangerous aura emanated from Ethan. He immediately took Jocelyn and Jiggy to the hospital. It was indeed a minor ailment, a nosebleed caused by stress. Holding the results, Ethan ignored Jocelyn's pleas and had them driven directly to the airport. He left them with a harsh warning, "Don't ever come back." Chapter 11. It was only then that Ethan realized his own foolishness. He had put his own daughter through so much for an illness that didn't even exist. He remembered Sadie lying on those examination tables, not making a single sound. She had looked at him with tears in her eyes, just wanting a word of comfort from him, just wanting to call him daddy. Ethan was filled with regret, but finding two people who were deliberately hiding in a vast sea of humanity was like finding a needle in a haystack. Ethan began a frantic search. He mobilized all the company's resources, even setting up a dedicated team to find clues, offering a hefty reward. After an almost exhaustive search, Ethan finally got a lead. A discreet private island in the south. "Book a flight now," his secretary looked troubled. "But there's a very important meeting soon. Postpone it." Ethan didn't hesitate for a second. All the way until the plane landed, his mind was busy constructing an apology. He arrived at the hotel where Claire was staying, based on the information he had. The privacy protection here was extremely strict. Ethan spent an hour trying to coax the front desk, using every trick in the book, but couldn't get a word out of them. Ethan looked up and noticed a large public screen. He asked, "Is this broadcast throughout the island?" The receptionist nodded. "On the beach. I was lounging under a sun umbrella, enjoying a rare moment of peace." Sadie, or rather, Sadie Sterling, as she was now officially known, was playing with other children by the shore. "Looks like you're in a good mood today." A tanned, muscular man walked over, handing me an iced drink, a smile in his eyes. I took it gracefully and nodded at him. Finally got Sadie's name officially changed. Changing her legal name after moving abroad was particularly troublesome. It had taken some time, but it was finally settled today. "What about you? Still not planning on going back?" I gestured with my chin, asking him. Caleb White was someone I had met after arriving on the island. When I first got here, I didn't know my way around and almost trespassed on someone's private property. If Caleb hadn't shown up in time, I probably would have been shot. After chatting a few times, we discovered we were in the same industry, just different departments. Meeting a fellow countryman in a foreign land, it was hard not to feel a sense of camaraderie. Caleb smiled and naturally lay down on the lounge chair next to me. I was planning on going back, but now I've changed my mind. He gave me a suggestive look. We were both adults. There was no need to spell out those ambiguous feelings. I told him frankly that I had no intention of having a holiday romance, but he retorted, asking how I knew it was just a fling. Maybe it was the real thing. Caleb's advances weren't off-putting. A house that had been cold and empty for too long could occasionally benefit from a candle to warm it up, so I tacitly allowed Caleb to get closer. Suddenly, his expression changed. He pointed at the large screen behind me. "Is that you?" I followed his finger. It was my TN Group employee ID photo. How did that end up on the screen? The next second, Ethan's face appeared with a caption underneath. "I'm sorry, please forgive me." My brow furrowed almost instantly. What angered me even more was that Ethan had also displayed a photo of me and my daughter. Was this man insane? Caleb guessed the situation from my expression and offered a clue. "The front desk controls all these big screens." I said, "Excuse me," and quickly got up and left. As I rushed back to the hotel, I received numerous stares. It only made me more furious. I walked into the hotel lobby and scanned the room. Ethan was huddled in a corner sofa, repeatedly recording, deleting, and re-recording a video. "Ethan Hawthorne, what do you think you're doing?" Chapter 12. Ethan looked up at the sound of my voice. It had been less than a month, but it felt like a century since we'd last seen each other. She was more radiant. Back at the company, she always wore proper, plain business attire, her long hair tied back, her makeup simple and precise. Now, without a trace of makeup, a bikini highlighted her perfect figure. A bikini. Ethan immediately stood up, took off his jacket, and moved to drape it over her shoulders. "What are you doing wearing this outside?" I swatted his hand away, my brow still tightly furrowed. "That's none of your business." "How is it not my business? You're my wife. I've already sent you the divorce agreement. If you have any sense, you'll sign it and we'll be even." Ethan refused to accept this and chose to ignore it. He stubbornly tried to take my hand. "Come back with me first. I'll apologize and explain everything." I pulled my hand away and didn't move. My heart was already dead beyond revival. His belated realization was nothing more than an epitaph for our marriage. Ethan Hawthorne, did Jocelyn Vance reject you? Or can the company not accept the stain of your marriage on your record? I confronted him directly. I was tired of being swayed by his every move, his every glance. I hated that I always held on to a sliver of hope, wanting to believe him again. The first time I believed him, I fell into the fiery pit of marriage and was trapped for 6 years. The second time I believed him, I nearly lost my child. Third time's the charm for breaking a habit. I wouldn't give him a third chance to hurt me. Ethan's hand hung empty in the air, and for a moment, he was at a loss. We had never fought, never even had a proper conversation. He didn't know how to break through this impenetrable version of me. He had always been the one walking ahead, and she was the one chasing his shadow. Claire, I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but you should at least think about Sadie. When he couldn't get through to the adult, he used the child. Shameless, Sadie is still so young. She needs a father's presence. How noble, how considerate, I laughed, a mix of anger and amusement. Now you realize she needs a father's presence? Where were you when Sadie was sick? Where were you when her school had an event? The school had invited parents to an evening event. I hadn't seen Jigga's parents, only a figure that looked remarkably like Ethan hurrying away. At the time, I thought I was mistaken. It turned out I had been wrong from the very beginning. Where were you when she was crying, wanting to call you daddy? Sadie is not your child. Sadie is just your nanny's child. Those words from years ago were like a brand, seared onto my chest, a constant reminder. A reminder of Ethan's cruelty and heartlessness. Faced with my tearful accusations, Ethan found he couldn't utter a single word of rebuttal. Every word that came from my mouth was a test of his conscience. Claire, I know I was wrong. Everyone makes mistakes. Give me a chance. I chuckled. A chance? Sadie gave you 3 chances. Did it make any difference? Ethan froze. What 3 chances? The office, the birthday party, and the final farewell. Don't tell me you didn't notice. You knew better than anyone. You had to have known. He knew but pretended not to. There were only 2 reasons. 1, he didn't care about me. 2, he didn't care about our relationship. Since he didn't care, why should I humiliate myself? I turned to the front desk and asked them to take down the missing person notice. Just then, Caleb walked in, carrying Sadie. Oh no, in my haste, I had forgotten about my child. As expected, the moment Sadie saw me, her lip quivered. Mommy, who is he? Ethan's demanding question immediately followed. Chapter 13. 2 grown men faced off in the hotel lobby. A silent, smoky battle. Caleb was the first to smile, introducing himself. I'm a friend of Claire's. He held Sadie tightly, a clear declaration of his role. Ethan didn't back down an inch, playing his trump card. I'm Claire's husband. Ex-husband, I believe, Caleb corrected with a cheerful smile. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sadie didn't look at Ethan the entire time, just hugged Caleb's neck tightly. Uncle, let's go back to our room. Then she turned and gave Ethan a casual nod. Goodbye, Mr. Hawthorne. The words Mr. Hawthorne stabbed him deeply. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my hand. Mr. Hawthorne, is there anything else? The big one and the little one, both calling him Mr. Hawthorne. It was as if he were just a fleeting passerby in their world. Insignificant. Ethan tightened his grip, a pained look on his face. Do we have to be so distant? My gaze was indifferent. Isn't this what you wanted? Calling you Mr. Hawthorne was the only way I could get a 3-minute phone call with you each week. Now that we're not bothering you, you should be happy. Chasing me here is just your ego acting up. Go back, sign the papers. It's better for both of us. I really can't continue this marriage with you. Perhaps I was saying it for myself, to extinguish any lingering hope. I finished, cutting off all avenues of retreat. I pulled my hand free without a second thought, glanced at my reddened wrist, and gave a bitter, mocking smile. See, you don't even care if I'm comfortable. Ethan watched as the elevator doors closed, cutting off her retreating figure. As the doors shut, my shoulders involuntarily relaxed. Caleb saw it. Did he hit you? What? No, then why are you so tense? Am I tense? You've been fiddling with your thumb ever since he showed up. You always do that when you're nervous. He said it with such certainty. I actually looked down to check, only to hear a low chuckle. Just kidding. I looked up, annoyed, and met his eyes, which were brimming with laughter. The discomfort from seeing Ethan began to fade. Ding! The elevator doors opened. I took Sadie from Caleb and thanked him. "You can call me for anything." "Thank you." Back in our suite, Sadie was clamoring for a bath. As I ran the water for her, my mind kept flashing back to Ethan in the lobby. I had watched him for 15 years. I knew exactly who Ethan Hawthorne was. He never looked back, never tried to hold on, never apologized. He would rather suffer double the financial penalty than admit he was wrong. "Mommy, the water is overflowing." Sadie tugged at my dress to get my attention. I snapped back to reality, hastily turning off the water and clumsily cleaning up the mess. But as I stepped back, I bumped into a shelf, sending bottles and jars clattering to the floor. After dealing with the mess, I was a wreck myself. My hair was plastered to my forehead, obscuring my vision. I let out a shaky breath, forcing myself to calm down and push the stray hairs away. "Mommy, are you okay?" Sadie was so perceptive, so worried about me. I reflexively curved my lips into a smile. "Mommy's fine." An hour later, we were sitting on the balcony, enjoying the gentle breeze. Sadie, unusually, was taking picture after picture with her phone. "Mommy, look at the camera and smile." I did as she asked, my mind in turmoil. I started talking to her to distract myself. "Why the sudden interest in taking pictures, Sadie?" "I have a feeling we won't be living here for long," she answered casually. I froze. "Why do you say that?" My daughter replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "He's found us, hasn't he? I don't want Mommy to be upset." "Huh." In her camera's frame, a figure emerged from the balcony behind me. Chapter 14. Ethan was carrying a chair out, hoping to get closer, but he happened to overhear Sadie's words. Now, sitting down felt awkward, and pretending he hadn't heard and retreating was too late. He sat down with a strange expression, his side turned towards them. "Claire, you think the sunset is nice too?" Caleb emerged from the adjacent balcony, nodding a greeting. There was no peace anywhere. I closed my eyes. I heard footsteps. Then I heard Sadie call out, "Uncle, let's take a picture together." The two of them, separated by a thin railing, chatted animatedly, frequently mentioning me. I was forced to join the conversation. Caleb, true to his past as a TV host, had me laughing out loud. The sound of my laughter echoed through the air. Ethan tried his best not to look at them, but after hearing my unrestrained laughter, he couldn't help but glance over. It was a radiant version of me he had never seen before. Free-spirited, carefree, it was her true self. With Caleb, she was like a sunflower in full bloom. But that brilliant flower had once been trapped in the tomb of his marriage, hidden from the sun. No, he had had a chance to properly nurture that flower. Ethan couldn't distinguish his own emotions. Was it more regret or more unwillingness to let go? He just wanted Claire to be able to laugh. It would be even better if she could laugh so freely by his side. His palm grew hot. He had practiced his apology so many times, but the moment he actually saw her, he couldn't get the words out. Now he regretted it deeply. He should have started with a proper apology. Ethan quietly glanced over again. Caleb handed me a ticket. "The fireworks show tonight, best seats. Coming?" There was no reason not to go. I desperately needed something new to distract me and nodded without hesitation. The fireworks show was a lively affair. Almost everyone on the island had gathered there. The best seats had a wide, open view, and couples were already huddled together, embracing. As the fireworks reached their peak, couples held each other and kissed. An arm wrapped around my waist. Caleb's intense, fiery gaze was fixed on me. Maybe it was the crowd, or maybe it was the heated atmosphere. I was slightly mesmerized by the heat, swallowed, and slowly closed my eyes. My heart pounded. I was aware of him getting closer. I grew more and more nervous. When our lips were just a breath apart, I suddenly pressed my hand against Caleb's chest. "I'm sorry, Claire, have you moved on so quickly?" Ethan's furious shout cut through the crowd. I saw him running towards us out of the corner of my eye. I frowned, turned, and pulled Sadie away in the opposite direction. Caleb followed close behind. My avoidance stung Ethan. At a fireworks show where everyone else was happy and fulfilled, the three of them were conspicuously unenthusiastic. Maybe Sadie was right. It was time to leave this place. I unfolded a map, picking out our next destination. Bang, 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 a heavy pounding on the door. I was instantly on alert and motioned for Sadie to hide. "Who is it?" "It's me." A muffled reply. I couldn't really make out who it was, but I had a sharp intuition. Ethan? The response was an even heavier pounding. People in the hallway were starting to complain. Thud after a loud crash, there was silence. Had he fainted outside? Or had he been kidnapped? Driven by a sense of basic human decency, I opened the door. Almost simultaneously, a tall figure stumbled into my arms. He kicked the door shut with his foot and desperately tried to kiss my lips. His hot breath enveloped me, setting my nerves on edge. Chapter 15. Get a hold of yourself, I slapped him across the face. The blow snapped Ethan's head to the side, but the hand on my waist only tightened, pressing me against him. Why are you hiding? This is how you used to treat me, isn't it? He rasped, his voice thick with bitterness and hurt. My muddled brain instantly cleared. I pushed him away with an authority that left no room for argument. Ethan, is this just another part of your revenge? Ethan's reason and emotion were at war. He should apologize. If he didn't apologize now, he might not get another chance. But his rational side screamed, why should I? She's the one who just packed up and left in that brief moment of hesitation. My judgment was passed. Get out, Claire, or I'm calling the police. My decisiveness forced his emotional side to retreat. Ethan backed away, step by step, out the door and out of my life's boundaries. I splashed cold water on my face. Staring at my reflection in the mirror, I saw that old exhaustion beginning to show again. A month was too short. I still couldn't face Ethan calmly. I packed our bags overnight, and carrying a half-asleep Sadie, we rushed to the airport. Before dawn, after 2 connecting flights, we arrived in a more secluded small town. This time, I got a year's respite. Ethan didn't find me. Only Caleb would send postcards from the various countries he traveled to for his hosting gigs. I focused on raising Sadie and politely declined the friendly gestures of our neighbors. It had been a year and a half since I left Ethan. This was the second Christmas Sadie and I had spent alone. We were adopting the local customs. As Sadie and I were decorating the Christmas tree, the doorbell rang. Assuming it was a delivery, I opened the door without a second thought. The person standing before me felt like a dream. Claire. Ethan's breath misted in the cold air. A year and a half apart had deepened the contours of his face, and a dark stubble shadowed his jaw. I instinctively tried to slam the door, but he caught the frame. Give me 10 minutes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small file folder, handing it to me. What you wanted? I've given it to you. I had a vague idea of what was inside. I didn't open it. I just nodded. Is there anything else? Don't you have anything to say to me? Merry Christmas? Claire, I'm begging you, please just look. His eyes were filled with a pleading, humble look. I was thunderstruck. I had never seen him so willing to lower himself. Under his earnest gaze, I opened the folder. Inside was the signed divorce agreement, the divorce certificate, and 3 graduation photos. In them, I was by turns shy, awkward, or more mature. In every photo, my eyes were searching for him. In one, I had deliberately stood by the edge of the basketball court, waiting for him to enter the frame, to capture that fleeting moment of us together. My long-buried secret was now laid bare. The flicker of emotion I felt instantly turned to hurt. What are you trying to say? That I'm still in love with you? The light in my eyes quickly dimmed. I threw open the door, took the photos, and tossed them into the fireplace. The flames flared brightly, then vanished into nothing. Along with my 9-year crush, buried in the warmth of a winter's day, Ethan didn't even have time to reach out. He just watched as his precious photos turned to ash. I waited for his accusation, but he only looked at me with a wounded expression and said softly, "It took me so long to find those photos. They were the only mementos I had. Now that you've burned them, can you give me a chance?" What kind of twisted logic was that? I couldn't understand him anymore. I especially couldn't understand how he had tracked me down here. "Can you please let me in? I'm very cold." He added, "My 10 minutes aren't up yet. I'll leave on my own when the time comes." His every move was deferential, putting me first. I almost suspected he had been replaced by an imposter. Outside, heavy snow was falling. Thick flakes had already collected on his long eyelashes. If he stayed out there, he would freeze. I stepped aside. After entering the house, Ethan's eyes searched the room with restraint. He visibly relaxed when he saw only signs of a woman and a child. "Where's Sadie?" He stood, rubbing his hands together. I poured him a cup of hot water. "She's at a friend's house." In reality, she was hiding in her room. Chapter 16. Ethan watched my movements, and only after I sat down did he slowly take a seat opposite me. "What did you want to say?" My eyes reflected the flickering firelight. Compared to a year and a half ago, her demeanor was much calmer. So calm it was unlike her. Or perhaps this was the real her. When Ethan was in school, he often heard people mention this underclassmen. His friends would even tease him, "I think she has a crush on you." When enough people mentioned it, he started to pay attention. He would always see Claire's name on various honor rolls and lists. Later, he didn't do as well as he'd hoped on his exams and ended up at his second-choice university. But at the new student orientation the following year, he saw her familiar face again. He checked the admission scores for that year. Claire's total score was at the top of the list again, yet she had chosen a school that was beneath her. Just like she had chosen a man who was beneath her. Ethan found it hard to define his feelings for her. Seeing her brought a sense of peace. Not seeing her brought a sense of curiosity, but nothing more. Later, when he was dating Jocelyn, he was completely focused on the family alliance. He thought that was the path he was destined to walk. When Jocelyn eloped with someone else, honestly, he was relieved. But he had to force himself to act the part of the devoted lover. Getting drunk, sleeping with Claire, getting married, everything just fell into place. For 6 years, he had run from his own heart and from his responsibilities. A year and a half ago, when he chased her to the island, he thought he could win her back with a little pressure, only to find that he and Claire had drifted too far apart. He had said the wrong things, done the wrong things, fueled by alcohol. The next morning when he woke up, he was in a panic, but it was too late. Ethan couldn't remember how he felt when he left the hotel. Caleb's taunts came one after another, but he only remembered one thing: if you keep pushing her, she'll run even farther away. Of all the things said, he only remembered that. After returning to his home country, Ethan quickly investigated Claire's whereabouts. And that's where he stopped. He threw himself into his work, establishing a foothold in places he had never been before. Step by step, he quietly extended his reach until he was just a stone's throw away from her. The love he had deliberately suppressed was unlocked by time, and it overflowed. But he had loved her too late. By the time Claire's love had faded, he was only just beginning to see himself clearly. Sitting at the Civil Affairs Bureau, waiting for the divorce certificate, he had wanted to run away several times. But he also knew that if he didn't remove this shackle, Claire would only drift further away. He hardened his heart, took care of everything, and flew over immediately. He knew Sadie was home, but he didn't plan on revealing that. The past flashed before his eyes, overlapping, melting into the dancing flames in front of him. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed. Suddenly, he didn't know where to begin. He took off his hat, gazed at her for a long time, then lowered his eyes. "My name is Ethan Hawthorne. I'm a self-employed entrepreneur, just getting settled here." This approach caught me completely off guard. "Can you give me a chance to get to know you again?" He looked so sincere as when he had proposed to me. My palm grew hot, 1,000 thoughts swirling in my mind. I didn't know if I could trust him again. "It's late. You should go home now." I was prepared for him to linger. But the man stood up without a word, left a business card on the table, and said, "I live about 5 kilometers from here." He was so obedient. I was stunned, watching him leave in a daze. Sadie came out, wrapped her arms around my waist, and looked up. "Mommy, are you upset?" "No, just a little." Strange. The next day, the mall was having a sale. Everyone was busy stocking up, and the place was packed. I pushed a small shopping cart, squeezing into the crowd. Pushing the cart with my left hand and holding Sadie's with my right was not easy. As we jostled through the crowd, the cart slipped from my grasp, and so did Sadie. Chapter 17. A cold sweat broke out on my back. I rushed to the information desk, intending to make an announcement. "Mommy," a clear, small voice called out from the crowd. I whipped my head around and saw Sadie from a distance, and Ethan holding her up high. Whether his presence here was a coincidence or deliberate, I had no time to ponder. I pushed through the crowd, rushing to their side. When I was just a person away, someone shoved me from behind, and I lost my balance, stumbling forward. I was caught firmly. It was a familiar scent. After all this time, had Ethan's preferences not changed at all? Ethan held Sadie steady with his right hand and wrapped his left arm around my back, creating a safe space for us. He was like the backbone of a family. I caught my breath for a moment, thanked him, and apologized, trying to stand on my own. The bustling crowd wouldn't give me the chance. I had no choice but to remain pressed against him. Ethan looked apologetic. I know you're uncomfortable, but we'll have to bear with it for now. What do you need? I'll get it for you. The protection I had longed for 6 years had suddenly appeared, now that my heart was dead and I no longer expected it. Fate certainly had a twisted sense of humor. I grabbed a few necessities, and we were pushed through the checkout line by the crowd. As soon as we were out of the mall, I immediately took Sadie from him and politely saw him to his car. Thank you for today. After his car drove away, Sadie looked up at me and asked, Mommy, is he trying to win you back? I burst out laughing. Have you ever seen someone pursue someone like that? Sadie looked confused. You're right. He should at least bring flowers and gifts. The next day, flowers and gifts arrived simultaneously. I left them outside. The third day, an invitation from Ethan arrived. Same position, double the salary and benefits. I politely declined. The fourth day, 2 front-row tickets to a musical appeared at my door with a note, Relax and enjoy with Sadie. His gifts were like leaves on a Christmas tree. There was everything, and never the same thing twice. It wasn't until he sent 8 large boxes at once, claiming they were birthday presents for Sadie, that I realized something was wrong. I picked up the slightly yellowed business card and, after much thought, dialed the number. It rang for only a second before he picked up, so fast that I hadn't even had time to compose my thoughts. Claire? Even through the phone, I could hear his excitement. I immediately composed myself, my mind crystal clear. We need to talk. Half a month later, we were sitting opposite each other again. I pushed all the accumulated gifts towards him. You don't need to send these anymore. The excitement on Ethan's face faded, but he forced a smile. You don't like them? No, it's just not necessary. My tone was calm as I explained slowly. Sadie was born out of my own selfish desires. She shouldn't be your responsibility or burden. We tortured each other for 6 years. To be able to chat peacefully now is the best outcome. I'll be moving back to our home country soon. I wish you all the best here. Ethan's face changed abruptly. He quickly grabbed my hand. Is it because I came here? I thought about waiting a bit longer, but I just couldn't help myself. I didn't know what he couldn't help, but it couldn't possibly be that he liked me. I didn't give him any room for misunderstanding. No, Sadie isn't used to the climate here, and she prefers our home country. We were already planning to go back after this winter. Ethan's eyes drooped like a rain-soaked puppy. That's all I have to say. Let's just go our separate ways. Seeing Ethan now, I no longer felt that suffocating, overwhelming feeling. Time is a wonderful thing. The mountain I once thought was insurmountable was now just a small mound at my feet. I wanted to leave, free of any lingering thoughts, but Ethan wouldn't let go. Claire, can we still keep in touch? He used to scoff at my calls, avoiding them like the plague. Now he was begging me. The power of a bruised ego is truly remarkable. It can completely distort a person's usual demeanor. Beneath my calm exterior, a subtle sense of absurdity and sorrow arose. I didn't answer, just nodded at him and left. Chapter 18. For the third time, I left his world. Compared to the first time, which was swift, and the second, which was secretive, this time we said a proper goodbye. But it hurt more than the previous 2 times. She was moving further away. Ethan didn't want to linger and add to her frustration and rejection, so he forced himself to stay abroad for another year. He bought the small house Claire had lived in, clinging to the last remnants of her warmth and presence. I returned to my home country. While still abroad, I had already arranged for our accommodation, Sadie's school, and my job. It was the same industry, so I ran into quite a few familiar faces. There were 2 former junior colleagues in my project team. They were happy to see me. As the project team leader, I gathered everyone for a casual meal. When I counted, I realized someone was missing. Aren't there 11 of us? Who's missing? The company had provided a team list, but I figured I would just meet everyone at dinner, so I hadn't looked at it closely. Oh, that's Jocelyn. Jocelyn Vance, she's in charge of our team's PR. A familiar name. A small world, a very small circle. I nodded, my expression unchanged, but I had a feeling trouble was brewing. And I was right. On the 3rd day of the project's preliminary preparations, the contents of our proposal were leaked. An investigation revealed that Jocelyn's USB drive had been stolen. This project was worth $100 million. The losses had already reached $10 million. The head office sent someone to investigate personally. In front of the corporate investigators, Jocelyn looked pitiful. The team leader didn't tell me it was a confidential document when she gave it to me. I thought it was just. Her first instinct was to shift the blame. I didn't waste my breath arguing with her. I just pulled up the surveillance footage. Audio and video perfectly clear. Jocelyn wouldn't accept it, yelling, "I want to see your Mr. Hawthorne." So, it was a subsidiary of TN Group. I had specifically tried to avoid TN, but it seemed no matter where I went, I ended up back with them. The investigator sneered, "Mr. Hawthorne is on a business trip. Do you think you can see him just because you want to?" A day later, Ethan appeared at the branch office, his face grim. Jocelyn ran to him, sobbing, and tried to take his arm. Many knew about the complicated history between Jocelyn and Ethan, and they all perked up their ears. "Ethan, how could I deliberately do something to harm the company? It was such an important document. If someone had told me, I would have taken good care of it." 2 years ago, she had wanted to make a name for herself, but Ethan had kicked her out of the company. Later, Ethan was busy with work, and time passed. With her persistent, pitiful act, she finally managed to get a job at a subsidiary. After 2 years, she finally saw Ethan again, and she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip by. Since Ethan had allowed her to join the group, didn't that mean he had forgiven her? As the head of PR, it's your responsibility to safeguard important materials. Do you need someone to remind you of that? Ethan didn't spare her any face. That afternoon, Jocelyn was once again kicked out. I stepped in, personally negotiating with the client and saving the project. I became famous in the company overnight. A transfer order from headquarters soon arrived. I was promoted to regional president, reporting directly to Ethan. There was no escaping him now. When the transfer was announced, Ethan kept stealing glances at me. Fortunately, I didn't show any strong rejection and accepted the promotion calmly. Ethan deliberately had my new office decorated exactly like my old one. The only difference was that it was right next to his. I went in for 10 minutes and came out with a pile of strange things. "Don't mess with my office." Ethan looked innocent. "These are all from your old office. These medicines, these cufflinks, they were all for you." I interrupted him, placing everything back on his desk, and said seriously, "Don't waste your effort on pointless things." I returned to my office and stretched. Looking at the familiar interface, a wave of confidence washed over me. Less than half a month later, rumors started spreading in the company again. "Mr. Hawthorne has a new love interest." The words had barely faded when Ethan started following me around like a shadow. I was getting annoyed. Before leaving work, I stopped him. "You're following me, do you like me?" Ethan froze. "See, you don't, so don't go to all this trouble for your bruised ego." I turned to leave and answered a call from the school. "Okay, I'm on my way." Chapter 19. Sadie got into a fight at school. By the time I rushed to the teacher's office, I saw a similarly bruised Jiggy. The world was too small. Before returning to the country, I had been worried that Sadie wouldn't fit in at school. It seemed she was fitting in just fine. The homeroom teacher gave them both a slap on the wrist, saying they were both at fault. Then she earnestly advised me, "Girls should be more ladylike. Fighting is a bad habit." I nodded. "I understand." But I secretly gave my daughter a thumbs up. The humiliation of losing the fight 2 years ago, the hurt caused by Ethan's indifference, were all wiped away by this victory. Especially since the opponent was Jiggy. For Sadie, it was a total triumph. After my perfunctory response, I asked, "May I ask what caused the fight?" At the mention of this, the teacher's expression became a little strange. She started with a disclaimer, "I'm not aware of the parents' private matters. This is just what I heard from the children. They said Sadie stole Jiggy's daddy." I was stunned, then gave a bitter smile. I didn't explain much, just nodded to show I understood. Seeing my calm expression, the teacher also breathed a sigh of relief. I knew the kids were just making things up. I was wondering how you... Before she could finish, Jiggy's eyes lit up as she looked at the door, shouting, "Daddy!" Several pairs of eyes turned towards the entrance. Ethan strode in. But he stopped beside Sadie, still 2 steps away from Jiggy. The teacher was momentarily confused. "You are?" Jiggy ran to him, hugging his leg, her grievances bursting forth. "Daddy, boo-hoo, she hit me, she's trying to steal my daddy." The expected comfort never came. Jiggy peeked through one eye to see his reaction and froze. Daddy was looking at Sadie, looking very emotional. Sadie was unusually calm. She shook her head, her young voice carrying a maturity beyond her years. I didn't. She came at me saying all sorts of weird things. What actually happened, no one knew, but I believed her. Sadie, like me, had long been disappointed in Ethan and held no hope for him. The light in Ethan's eyes dimmed again. The atmosphere was strange. Jiggy sensed something was wrong and started crying loudly to gain sympathy. Daddy, everyone's laughing at me, they all think I stole her daddy, boo-hoo-hoo, she sobbed and hiccuped. It was a pitiful sight. Ethan didn't even blink. Where's your mother? The teacher quickly interjected. Jiggy's mother said her father would be coming. Thinking of the several missed calls from Jocelyn on his phone, Ethan's eyes darkened even more. I curled my lip in a self-mocking smile. Still in contact as the child's parents, yet he had the audacity to pester me. Just as I was about to end this farce, I heard Ethan speak. Is that so? Since it's not my child's fault, I'll be taking her now. Taking which one? The teacher was momentarily confused. Ethan turned to Sadie. Let's go. I shot him a glance and quickly distanced myself. This is my child. Please refrain from claiming relatives you don't have. My daughter also spoke up politely. Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. 2 consecutive remarks, like 2 bullets, one to the head, one to the heart. They left Ethan stunned and soul crushed. By the time he came to his senses, I had already led Sadie past him. He dazedly, instinctively, chased after them, hearing the child's proud boast. You should have seen it, I beat her so bad she couldn't even fight back. Good thing Uncle Caleb taught me how to box, hee. I bent down and affectionately tapped her nose. Uncle Caleb. Which other Uncle Caleb could there be? Ethan's heart pounded as he hurried after them. Claire, are you still in touch with Caleb White? I stopped and turned my head to look at him. You should know that your question is very rude, right? The man, afraid she would distance herself again, quickly apologized. No, what I mean is, he was ruthlessly cut off by me. Ethan Hawthorne, don't be so possessive of other people's social circles. Chapter 20, Ethan was speechless. The woman in front of him had a cold look in her eyes. Not like before, when she always looked at him with sparkling eyes. When they were abroad, he had thought she was just putting on a brave face, refusing to back down. He hadn't expected her to be even tougher back in their home country. Even when facing Jocelyn and Jiggy, Claire didn't bat an eye. Ethan had known Jocelyn was at this branch office the day Claire started. He had wanted to get rid of her right away, to avoid any trouble. But he also wanted to see Claire's reaction, to see if she was truly, as she claimed, no longer trapped by the past. Claire wasn't just no longer trapped, she had been completely reborn. If Mr. Hawthorne has nothing else, we'll be leaving now. Seeing them about to leave, Ethan quickly called out, I haven't seen Sadie in a long time. In the past, Sadie always followed him around. Maybe she was a way in. She had craved his approval so much. Surely she hadn't changed so much in just 2 short years. Sadie looked up at him. Mr. Hawthorne, you've seen me now. Mommy and I have to go find Uncle Caleb. Goodbye. Her calm, distant tone was just like her mother's. Ethan was deeply hurt. Sadie, you can call me Daddy. No matter what, he was her biological father. This had once been Sadie's greatest wish. Now it was within reach, but it was no longer on her life's checklist. Sadie answered seriously, My last name is Sterling. I only have a mother. A dull pain spread through Ethan's chest. He couldn't imagine the extent of the pain he had caused them. The wife and daughter who once revolved around him, he had lost them in a single night, and now he could never get them back. Ethan suppressed his disappointment and sadness and tried another approach. Then you can call me Uncle Ethan, just like you call him Uncle Caleb. It was a simple, polite term of address, but Sadie still shook her head. Uncle Caleb and Mommy are very close. The implication was that Ethan was not worthy of being called Uncle Ethan. The stark contrast between then and now was like falling from the clouds into the mud. He was stunned, and Claire had already led Sadie far away. Ethan stood alone by the roadside, brought back to reality by his phone's alarm. Sadie's birthday is in 2 days. Master, please prepare as soon as possible. He came to his senses, his gaze gradually focusing with determination. There was still a chance. On Sadie's birthday. I took the day off, and my daughter and I wore matching outfits. Mommy, hurry up, Uncle Caleb's car is outside. Sadie had been watching from the window since early morning. Now she eagerly slid off the sofa and slung her small backpack over her shoulder. I smiled and took her hand as we walked out the door. Outside, Caleb had just gotten out of his car, wearing clothes that matched ours. I didn't point out his little trick. Perfect timing, let's go, little princess. Before we could get in the car, another car slowly pulled up in front of us. The window rolled down, and Ethan stuck his head out. Sadie, I have a birthday present for you. He had driven straight towards us. He couldn't have missed seeing Caleb. I was starting to get annoyed by Ethan's lack of self-awareness. I spoke up before Caleb could. We're about to leave. Thank you for your kindness. I didn't give Ethan a chance to reply, just opened the car door and got in, all in one smooth motion. Caleb smiled and extended an invitation to the not-so-happy-looking man. If you're free, want to join us? And so, 2 cars pulled up, one after the other, in front of the city's largest stadium. Sadie and I were busy inside, greeting guests. Ethan stood by the entrance, staring at the heart-shaped decoration. It was a very familiar decoration. He heard Caleb's cheerful voice beside him. Sadie is very clever. She put this together, photo by photo. My eyes were blurry from printing all the photos for her. Ethan could even imagine the 3 of them sitting together, picking out photos, teasing each other. There were at least 1,000 photos, and not a single one had him in it. Ethan's heart felt warm, and he was filled with a sense of unwillingness, yet also helplessness. Inside the stadium, a giant photo of Sadie was hanging, and all the children were green with envy. Go on and look around. I need to go help. Caleb said this and then rushed over to the busy mother and daughter. The 3 of them went around greeting everyone. Caleb took the heavy gifts and helped them navigate through the crowds. This was what a family of 3 looked like. At Sadie's last birthday party, what was he doing? Ethan vaguely remembered standing to the side with Jocelyn, coldly watching Claire's predicament. He was a terrible person. Didn't you say your dad was dead? A young voice pulled Ethan from his wandering thoughts. Chapter 21. The lively venue fell silent. The guests turned to look at Jiggy, who had spoken. Wasn't the man standing next to Sadie her father? Slap, a loud, sharp slap. Sadie didn't even blink. If they hadn't seen her pull her hand back, no one would have even realized what happened. Accompanied by Jocelyn's shriek, Jiggy burst into tears. Ethan saw it all. Before, he had only heard the teacher's account, and the children's injuries weren't obvious, so he could remain detached. But now, he had seen Jiggy get hit with his own eyes. He had no feelings for Jocelyn, but for Jiggy. He felt a pang of pity. Jiggy astutely caught his hesitation and ran towards him, seeking comfort. She was only halfway there when she was lifted up by her collar. Caleb's face was grim. He ignored her flailing legs. Whose child are you? Don't you have any manners? Jiggy was so scared she stopped crying. Jocelyn trembled and clutched Ethan's sleeve. Ethan, please save Jiggy. To an outsider, it looked as if Jiggy was facing a life or death situation. Caleb heard her and looked at Ethan. Is she yours? Ethan was so startled he quickly shook his head. No, I was tired of the drama and calmly called for security. Please escort them out. As she was being led away, Jocelyn desperately pleaded with Ethan, but was met with his silence. In a fit of desperation, she turned and yelled at me, Is Caleb White the child's father that he can just boss everyone around like this? I didn't answer. To the guests, silence was an admission. Ethan's heart clenched. The venue was huge, but he couldn't breathe. Even so, Ethan stayed until the end of the birthday party. As the cleaning crew started to work, I stayed behind to help finish up. Ethan wanted to approach me, but he had only taken one step when he saw me cover my mouth and retch. Did she hate him that much now? The next second, my face contorted in pain, and I collapsed. A figure appeared almost instantly, scooping me up before Ethan could and rushing me to the hospital. I groggily opened my eyes and immediately sensed the unusual atmosphere. Caleb was sitting and Ethan was standing. They both moved at the same time. Ethan was full of guilt. I'm sorry, I checked the surveillance footage. It was Jocelyn. All the evidence is here. I'll cooperate with whatever you decide to do. It wasn't his fault, yet he had taken responsibility. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't have the strength to even smile. I said faintly, let the law handle it. I didn't even have the energy to look at him. If he had cut off all his ambiguous ties and focused on apologizing to me, I might have respected him as a man. But I really couldn't have any illusions about him, because men don't change. "If there's nothing else, Mr. Hawthorne, you can leave." Fearing Ethan would say something about taking care of me, I added, "Caleb will take care of me." After that, there was no point in staying. Ethan didn't want her to hate him even more, so he quietly got up. "Take care of yourself." He walked to the door and couldn't help but look back. He saw me and Caleb laughing and talking. He was the odd one out. When he saw me lying on the bed with my eyes closed, Ethan had decided several times that the moment I woke up, he would confess his feelings. But when he actually met my eyes, he couldn't get the words out. Now his confession would be meaningless. It would just be hypocritical. Inside the hospital room, I saw the door close out of the corner of my eye and my smile faded. "Caleb, you've had a long day. You should go home and rest too." Caleb rolled his eyes at me. "What kind of nonsense is that?" He picked up an apple and a fruit knife. A long, red peel flowed from between his slender, pale fingers. The only sound in the quiet room was the soft rustle of the peeling. I didn't try to send him away again. Chapter 22. After a mild case of food poisoning, I was discharged from the hospital after 2 days. The day I returned to work, my colleagues showered me with get-well gifts. Among the various items, a bouquet of sunflowers stood out. I was transported back to graduation season. As a young girl, I never dared to talk to Ethan. I would just mix in with the crowd of his admirers at his graduation and secretly give him a single sunflower. Sunflowers, a symbol of silent, unspoken love. I thought of it as a little secret between me and Ethan. Had he noticed all along? The bouquet ended up on the company's balcony. But I didn't expect this to be just the beginning. From that day on, every morning, a fresh bouquet of sunflowers would be on my desk. My colleagues teased me about my new admirer. I just brushed it off and continued to place them on the large balcony, until the balcony was full. I spent half a day clearing a space for one more pot. This couldn't go on. I went to find Ethan. He was in a meeting. When he saw me outside the glass door, his speaking pace quickened. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at his desk. "Stop sending flowers." The anticipation on Ethan's face faded. The heir to TN, the designated successor, was now at a loss. "You don't like them?" I sighed. "I know why you're sending them, but please stop. The past is in the past. I'm not looking back. Next time, I'll throw them in the trash." I didn't give him much room to maneuver. Ethan didn't dare to disobey. He was afraid I would run away again without a word, just like before. If he couldn't send flowers, there were other ways to get close to her. The new project team will be led by Mr. Hawthorne himself. The work assignment came down, and Ethan became the project supervisor. The team leader was, of course, me. It was just work. The project was critical, so it was normal for Ethan to be personally involved. I didn't think much of it, but then I overheard some employees gossiping in the break room. "Do you think Mr. Hawthorne likes Manager Sterling?" I saw a card in the flowers Manager Sterling receives every day. It looked like Mr. Hawthorne's handwriting. "No way, Mr. Hawthorne. Mr. Hawthorne is pursuing Claire Sterling." A pleasant male voice interrupted their gossip. I froze. Through the screen, I saw the side of Ethan's face. Was he insane? The gossiping employees were momentarily speechless, then quickly fled. They turned a corner and ran right into me, freezing for a second before scrambling away. Ethan turned and met my gaze. I was speechless, managing only a dry, "Mr. Hawthorne." As I turned to leave, I heard Ethan say, "I'm not kidding." I pretended I hadn't heard. At work, I tried my best to avoid being alone with Ethan, but the inevitable happened. A site inspection at the construction site. Only Ethan and I had the experience, so we were forced to go together. Fortunately, the site had been abandoned for a long time, and there was much to discuss. We spent the whole time talking about work. The moment we arrived, we went straight to the site. By the time it was getting dark, we only had the basement left. Just as we entered the basement, the lights suddenly went out. I froze for a moment and pulled out my phone. Before I could turn on the flashlight, something crashed to the ground. A loud thud. Then, countless unidentified objects started falling. Just as I managed to see what they were in the dim light, Ethan tackled me to the ground. Rocks fell one by one until the small space was packed tight. The space was small, and the air to breathe was even smaller. My heart was racing, and the smell of blood filled my nose. My hands were shaking, but my voice was relatively calm. "I'll call for help." Fortunately, the basement wasn't sealed off, and there was a weak signal. After countless attempts, I finally got through to the police and gave them our location. Only then did I feel a sense of relief and have the presence of mind to ask about Ethan. "How are you?" No response. The smell of blood was stronger. A rare sense of panic washed over me. I asked again, my voice urgent, "Ethan, Ethan?" His weak, muffled voice came through, I'm here. It was a slurred, almost whiny sound. "Claire, don't leave me." Chapter 23. Hospital. Ethan was covered in bandages. Fortunately, they were all minor injuries, just scrapes and bruises. I sat by his bed, waiting for him to wake up, while also checking the surrounding surveillance footage. The police came by again to take my statement. After all the commotion, it was already past midnight. Caleb rushed in and draped a jacket over my shoulders. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, my throat dry. "Can you get me something to eat and drink?" He left immediately. No sooner had he left than Ethan woke up. His long eyelashes fluttered. It took him a moment to register his surroundings. He turned his head sharply, and a relieved smile spread across his face when he saw me sitting there, unharmed. "Are you okay?" He still needed verbal confirmation. I shook my head, then stared at him in silence. My expression was unreadable. That restless feeling stirred in Ethan's heart again. He suddenly smiled. "This feels so familiar. You used to be like this." I was stunned for a second. He continued, "In college, I was on the basketball team. The other team played dirty and injured my knee. When I woke up, you were sitting by my bed, watching over me. I thought to myself, that's a familiar underclassman. She's kind of cute." After so many years, hearing him bring up the past felt strange and surreal. It was true. I had watched him get taken down, and I was so worried that I insisted on taking care of him myself. Afterwards, I even went to argue with the referee, fighting for a long time until they gave our team the points we deserved. I had been so bright and passionate for him back then. Later, I heard that the referee only changed the score because some girl wouldn't leave him alone. It was unbelievable. "Claire, thank you. You did so much for me, and it's only today that I understand what it all meant." Ethan looked at me steadily. His amber eyes were full of emotion. In the past, I was always captivated by those amber eyes. Now I could look into them without any feeling at all. I smiled nonchalantly. "We were young, we had endless energy." Then I added pointedly, "Not anymore." Ethan pursed his lips, wanting to say something, but not knowing what was appropriate. It seemed the only way he could hold my attention for a moment was with faded memories. "The sunflower you gave me at graduation, I've kept it all this time. I thought to myself back then, if I ever saw you again, I would force myself to be brave." He said it softly. I don't know if he was saying it for me or for himself. I was slightly distracted. Force himself to be brave. What was there for him to be afraid of? The grandson of the TN founder, he could have anything he wanted. What was there to fear? Ethan changed the subject. "Do you still have your graduation photos?" I answered matter-of-factly. "I threw them away. When I decided to start a new life, I threw everything away." Ethan was speechless. In the silence, Caleb walked in with breakfast. "I got your favorite." After meeting Ethan's gaze, he added, "Good thing I bought an extra." I saw right through his lie. "What do you mean you bought an extra? Share with me." "Besides, I've been up all night. I don't have much of an appetite." So Ethan watched as Caleb gave him a portion and then divided the rest into two. "Oh, there are only 2 pairs of chopsticks," Caleb said, then naturally handed one to Ethan. I didn't think much of it and started to get up. "I'll go get." Caleb grabbed my hand. "Just use mine." His eyes darted around, then he corrected himself. "No, I mean, please allow me to borrow yours." It would be a hassle to go get more. I didn't refuse. I finished my food first, and Caleb, without any hesitation, took the container and continued eating. "How close do you have to be to do that?" Ethan was a little jealous. No, he was very jealous. In their 6 years of marriage, they had never been so intimate. But it wasn't my fault. It was his fault. Countless times, I had waited at home for him to come back for dinner. His response was always working late, working late, working late. He let the food grow cold on the table, and he let my warm, passionate heart grow cold too. He had brought this upon himself. Caleb finished eating and said playfully, "Now that we've shared saliva, you have to take responsibility for me." He was met with 3 light punches from me. "Can't you ever be serious?" Although it was a complaint, my eyes were full of laughter. It was a complete contrast to the cold, awkward way I had been with Ethan. Ethan could only grasp at the last straw. Claire, while I'm recovering, can you come visit me more often? Chapter 24. After all, he was injured because of her. She couldn't be that heartless, could she? I tilted my head and asked, why? That one question sent Ethan to the polar regions. He couldn't bring himself to say it was because he had saved her. It would make it seem like his intentions weren't pure from the start. My reason for refusing was also very solid. What happened at the construction site was definitely not an accident. I need to spend some time following up on it, and the project can't be delayed too much. I need to talk to our partners. I have a lot of work to do. I really can't come see you every day. This blocked all of Ethan's excuses. At first, he held out hope that maybe I was just being stubborn. But after 3 days of no contact, Ethan finally understood his place. As the person who was once closest to me, he could only learn about my schedule through work software. The contact number he had been blocked from for so long was still on the page where I had last asked him why he hadn't arrived at Sadie's birthday party yet. Ethan's thumb slipped and he sent a period, but he saw that it wasn't the familiar red exclamation mark. He sat up straight in disbelief. Had Claire unblocked him? Ethan was like a teenager in the throes of first love, clutching his phone all day, waiting for every vibration. From morning till night, his hope gradually faded. The message had been sent, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea. He didn't know when or if there would be a response. Claire held all the power. Was this how she had felt, waiting every day for a reply that would never come? Like going to the airport every day, waiting for a ship that would never arrive. Ethan's impatient words from back then, "What's the point of waiting? If I didn't reply, it means I'm busy," had finally become a sharp sword, piercing his own chest. On the 5th day, the hospital room door opened. Caleb walked in, holding Sadie's hand. "Sadie said she wanted to come see you. I'm going to get gas." Caleb was direct, decisively creating a private space for the two of them. Ethan was clearly at a loss, sitting up, wanting to help, but his movements were clumsy and restricted. Sadie stopped him. "Mr. Hawthorne, you don't have to trouble yourself. I came to thank you for saving my mother. Mommy taught her to keep things separate. Thanks should be given where thanks are due. Uncle Caleb taught her the same." Ethan lay back down, a bitter taste in his mouth. "No need to thank me. I'm the one who owes you." The child's expression flickered at his words. Ethan looked at her obedient face, filled with regret, and sincerely apologized. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for ruining your birthday party back then. I was not a good father. For helping the other child, I must have been out of my mind." He apologized for one thing after another. He brought out the guilt he had chewed on countless times and laid it bare. Facing Sadie, Ethan found it easier to be honest. Sadie's expression didn't change much, but her eyes reddened slightly. "Mr. Hawthorne, Mommy didn't decide to leave on the day she left." Ethan was stunned. Sadie, with red-rimmed eyes, confessed, "Ever since that woman came back, Mommy and I made a pact." She recounted the story, the pacts, the moments their hearts broke but they held back their tears. When she finished, Ethan was silent for a second, and then tears streamed down his face. What had he done to the wife and daughter who loved him so deeply? Did his pain now even compare to a fraction of theirs? Ethan was in too much pain to speak. Tears soaked his hospital gown. Sadie placed a box of tissues in his hand. "Mr. Hawthorne, take care of yourself. What's done is done. It's better to move forward." Chapter 25. After that, Ethan stayed in the hospital, using his recovery as an excuse. He would occasionally watch TV to pass the time. One day, a familiar face appeared on the news. Caleb, as the host, was interviewing Claire about the incident at the construction site. Claire answered perfectly. The other hosts, in their chat, shifted the topic to her personal life. "A woman as outstanding as Miss Sterling, why are you still single? Do you have any requirements?" Ethan unconsciously focused his attention. Claire smiled faintly, not avoiding the topic. "I like who I like, it's a feeling, I guess." The host nodded, then turned to Caleb. "Caleb is our youngest host here, and the only one who's not married. Why don't you take this opportunity, courtesy of Miss Sterling, and put yourself out there?" Caleb smiled, his eyes fixed on Claire, and said with great sincerity, "I'm currently pursuing a very outstanding woman. I'm afraid I'm not interested in anyone else." The other hosts all teased them. It was obvious they could see the special connection between Caleb and Claire. In front of the TV, Ethan gripped the remote, watching the radiant person on the screen. He just couldn't accept it. He couldn't just hand her over. He glanced at the glass on the table, and with a surge of desperation, he shattered it. He picked up a shard and slashed it across his wrist. The blood flowed quickly. He slowly lost consciousness. He woke up again in a high-end hospital room. On the table was a bouquet of flowers with a card. "Love yourself before you love others. I learned that very late. I hope you don't take the same detour." Ethan was ecstatic. Claire still cared about him otherwise. Why would she send flowers? Why would she leave such a card? He was so overjoyed he didn't even read the card's contents properly, just eagerly asked the nurse where the person who sent the flowers was. The nurse looked at him strangely. A delivery person brought them. A bucket of cold water was poured over his head. Ethan muttered to himself, "Impossible." But he soon confirmed that Claire had indeed not come, because Claire was busy conquering the business world. While Ethan was recovering, Claire single-handedly closed 2 difficult projects, doubling the company's market value. This prompted headquarters to give her an unprecedented promotion, appointing her as the regional president. Aside from Ethan's background, her position was even a level higher than his. At the celebration party, everyone gathered around Claire, congratulating the rising star. Caleb, as an invited guest and special reporter, was always by Claire's side, his left hand holding Sadie's. They looked like a family of 3. In a corner, a pair of eyes stared at them menacingly. Ethan was there too, sitting quietly on a sofa. That family of 3, if things had gone differently, should have been him. He gripped his glass, the taste of bitterness the only thing he could register. Boom, a loud explosion suddenly erupted. The venue descended into chaos. Claire quickly shielded the child and looked for a safe escape route. Suddenly, a large hand grabbed her and pulled her outwards. Having learned a few moves from Caleb in her spare time, Claire managed to break free. In the confusion, she looked back and saw the person pull a dagger from his coat. The panicking guests blocked her path. Claire, a scream pierced through the noisy hall. Caleb and Ethan both ran towards her at the same time. Shhnk blood spurted out. It was impossible to tell whose it was. All they saw was the person quickly pocketing the dagger and disappearing into the crowd. I paced anxiously outside the operating room, unable to stand still. A short while later, he was wheeled out. The doctor looked relatively relaxed. It didn't hit any vital organs. He'll be fine after some rest. But seeing Caleb with his eyes tightly shut, it was hard to feel at ease. I stubbornly stood guard by his bed, completely forgetting that Ethan had also been taken to the hospital. Ethan, his arm in a sling, stood at the door of the hospital room, gazing at my focused back. His heart ached, more than his injured arm. He walked in and said softly, "I'll watch him for a bit. You go check on Sadie." It had all happened so suddenly. Sadie had been left with another friend. I came to my senses, realizing he was right, and hurried off. A few minutes later, Caleb's heavy eyelids fluttered open. When he saw Ethan, he clicked his tongue in annoyance and quickly closed them again, thinking he was hallucinating. "Since you're awake, let's talk." It wasn't a hallucination. Caleb opened his eyes, his patience thin. "Spit it out." Ethan was provoked. "Do you think you can win her heart like this?" He had nearly died from self-harm, and Claire hadn't even shown her face. Claire didn't fall for that kind of drama. Caleb scoffed. "Is that all you have to say? Do you think she'll grieve for me? If she wouldn't grieve for you, why was she waiting here for me? If I'm not mistaken, you sent her away, didn't you?" Chapter 26. Not a single wasted word. He had Ethan figured out completely. Even though he was exposed, Ethan wasn't angry. "If you think you can win Claire over with these tricks, you still don't know her well enough." But Caleb's expression didn't change. "If I remember correctly, you've known Claire for 17 years. She had a crush on you for 15. You think you know her so well? Other than knowing her longer than I have, what else do you have to brag about? Even your own flesh and blood is closer to me. Mr. Hawthorne, allow me to remind you, a person cannot be won. Claire is not an object, not a trophy. She is the woman I love." These words had probably been brewing in Caleb's heart for a long time. He looked at Ethan, not pausing for a breath. "Back on the island, if you had been this persistent, maybe I would have felt threatened. But now you have no chance at all. It's true that I haven't known Claire for long, but I am willing to listen to her to understand her. Ethan Hawthorne, do you think what you're doing now is meaningful? Threatening with self-harm. Are you a child? Even Sadie never thought of using self-harm to threaten you, did she?" His words left Ethan feeling utterly ashamed. After he had calmed down, he also thought his self-harm attempt was foolish. Now, having it laid bare like this, his pride was even more wounded. The atmosphere became tense. When I returned, this was the scene I walked into. Without a second thought, I said, "Ethan Hawthorne, can't you see the situation? Do you have to provoke Caleb right now?" No questions asked, just instant condemnation. Ethan wanted to argue, but his mind flashed back to the past. He used to be like this, always assuming I was in the wrong without a second thought. The words of protest were stuck in his throat. I was already rushing to check on Caleb, my voice choked with what sounded like tears. "Are you okay? Does it hurt anywhere? Are you an idiot? Why didn't you dodge when you saw the dagger?" Caleb lovingly wiped away my tears and smiled. "If I dodged, what would have happened to you?" They spoke in low voices for a while longer. My eyes were already red and swollen. Ethan had seen me cry before. It was on our first wedding anniversary. I had meticulously prepared everything, but he was in a bad mood that day. He came home, threw a tantrum, and destroyed everything I had prepared. I had just whimpered quietly then. I didn't even dare to cry out loud. The next day, I acted as if nothing had happened and even tried to comfort him. If he could go back to that day, if he had happily eaten a meal with her, would things have been different? If he could go back to Sadie's birthday, if he had shown up on time, would he have earned himself another chance? There were no more ifs. Ethan lowered his eyes and quietly left the hospital room. No one noticed his departure. His heart felt like it was about to stop. So this is what it felt like to be ignored by the one you love. Ethan stumbled out and finally, unable to bear the blow, he fainted. Chapter 27. After that, there was no contact between them. The next time he heard news of Claire, it was all over the top trending topics. Caleb White had proposed to Claire Sterling. A romantic helicopter banner, advertisements covering entire buildings, a limited edition diamond ring. Everything declared to the world that Claire was his treasure. In the pictures, Claire's eyes were glistening with tears as she tearfully said, "I do." Ethan stared blankly, rewinding the video over and over to hear those two words. When he proposed to Claire, no, it couldn't even be called a proposal. He had just come from the hospital, holding the pregnancy test results, and said to her impassively, "Well, there's no other way. Let's get married." And so they went and got their marriage certificate. She was so happy when they took the photo, he didn't know why. He had only dared to secretly twitch the corner of his lips into a smile. As a result, in their certificate photo, he looked like he was sneering. If only they could retake it, he would definitely fix his expression. There was no chance for that. There would never be another chance like that. Claire's generosity and kindness had closed their doors to him 2 years ago. Caleb and Claire's wedding was set for a month later. They were busy with all the preparations, completely swamped. In a rare moment of leisure, Claire couldn't help but complain, "What's the rush? It's not like I'm going to run away." Caleb kissed her on the corner of her lips to soothe her. "The sooner we get married, the longer we can be husband and wife. Isn't that better?" He couldn't compete with Ethan in terms of how long they had known each other, but he could at least make their marriage last longer. He didn't want to waste a single second. On the wedding day, many colleagues came to offer their blessings. A former friend whispered to Claire, "Oh my God, I had no idea Secretary Kaio was that kind of person. To think she tried to harm you." Claire was unconcerned. "It's all in the past." Not long after the surveillance footage was found that day, the police solved the case. Jocelyn, out of spite, had hired someone to do it. The original plan was to lure Ethan away and then deal with her alone, but who knew Ethan would stick to her like glue, impossible to separate. Out of consideration for her feelings for Ethan and his background, Jocelyn ultimately didn't go through with the most brutal part of her plan. Of course, the Hawthorne family wouldn't let her off so easily. The wedding went smoothly. As the bride stood at the altar, a shower of roses suddenly rained down from the sky. Hundreds of drones hovered overhead, and after releasing the roses, they began to perform an aerial show. Claire looked at the man beside her in astonishment. "Caleb, when did you prepare this?" Caleb was also a little surprised, but he went along with it. "Maybe it's a surprise from one of our friends." Not far from the venue, under the shade of a tree, Ethan silently watched it all. He was not resigned. How could he be? That should have been his girl. That should have been his, a complete and passionate love. But now he just wanted her to be happy. To be a secret witness was enough for him. Ethan pulled his hat down low, and as he turned to leave, he heard 3 clear, choked-up words from the microphone. "I do."